Welcome to this edition of
You Asked For It.
Tonight, on You Asked For It, Democratic presidential primary candidate Hillary Clinton. Mrs. Clinton asked anyone to name one thing she's been influenced on.
Anybody who knows me, who thinks that they can influence me, name anything they've influenced me on. Just name one thing.
Well, Mrs. Clinton, here to tell us how you were influenced, not once, but twice, on a bankruptcy bill sponsored by the big banks and consumer lending industry, is Professor Elizabeth Warren of the Harvard School of Law. Tell us, Professor Warren, how was Mrs. Clinton influenced on this bill?
I had written an op-ed about a piece of pending bankruptcy legislation. The credit card companies have been pushing to try to tighten the bankruptcy laws. So they were trying to get the bankruptcy laws constricted, so that fewer families could get in. Why? Because you can make more money if those families don't go into bankruptcy, if you're a credit lender. And so I'd written an op-ed about how this would fall disproportionately hard on women who were raising families and who would be put in the position under this bill of trying to compete with Citibank, MasterCard, Visa, Bank One for getting alimony and child support from their ex-husbands. Mrs. Clinton evidently saw
The First Lady.
The First Lady. She was then First Lady. This is in the 1990s, late 1990s. Mrs. Clinton saw the piece, and I got a call from the White House. And they said Mrs. Clinton was going to be in town to give a speech in Boston, and would I come and meet with her? I show up at the appointed place. After she's finished her speech, we're ushered into a tiny little room somewhere in the bowels of this hotel, and just the two of us. They close the door. Mrs. Clinton sits down, and she says, "Tell me about bankruptcy." I go over the law. It's a complex law. Went over the economics, showed her the graphs, showed her the charts, and she got it. And at the end of the conversation, Mrs. Clinton stood up. She said, "Let's get our picture taken," which we did. And she said, "Professor Warren, we've got to stop that awful bill," referring to this bankruptcy bill that's sponsored by the credit card companies. President Clinton had been showing that this was another way that he could be helpful to business. It wasn't a very high visibility bill. The last bill that came before President Clinton was that bankruptcy bill that was passed by the House and the Senate in 2000, and he vetoed it.
So when Hillary Clinton was First Lady, you influenced her to oppose that bankruptcy bill, and she got her husband, the president, to veto it. Okay, you told us there were 2 times she was influenced on this bill. Tell us about the second time.
One of the first bills that came up after she was Senator Clinton was the bankruptcy bill. This is a bill that's like a vampire. It will not die, right? There's a lot of money behind it. And
Her husband had vetoed.
Her husband had vetoed it very much at her urging.
And?
She voted in favor of it.
Why?
As Senator Clinton, the pressures are very different. It's a well-financed industry. Those are the people, the credit card companies, have been giving money, and they have influence.
And Mrs. Clinton was one of them, as senator.
So, you're telling us that Hillary Clinton was influenced by the consumer credit industry and their money to change her position on that bill, to support it, and to vote for it.
She has taken money from the groups, and more to the point, she worries about them as a constituency.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Hillary Clinton sold out on that bankruptcy bill, and people have been saying she's been selling out ever since. Well, Mrs. Clinton, there you have it. You asked for it, and we gave it to you. And that's it for this edition of
You Asked